And I can imagine a lot of highly sensitive people have the same struggles.
With HSPs, we're so in our brains and disconnected from our bodies. Sometimes I feel like a lot of the stress that we experience comes from being so sensory sensitive, but
Yes.
also we can really lean into that as a way to support ourselves.
Breathing really is underrated.
Right? But that's like the reason we're laughing is because it's so like duh.
We make it so complex because the human mind really is complex.
Your relationship with your nervous system is a two-way street.
Highly sensitive friends since 2018, we've been sharing our journeys together.
And now we're bringing you along for the ride,
Welcome to Highly Sensitive Friends Talking,
where we chat about all things HSP, from daily life scenarios
to exploring spirituality, personal growth.
and all the aha moments in between.
So grab a cozy drink and settle in.
Because this is your space to feel seen, heard, and inspired.
Let's spend some time together.
As you know, we've had quite some busy weeks, both of us. I don't know about you, but for me, my nervous system was so all over the place for the past few weeks. And yesterday, I had the worst introvert hangover. Like,
Oh
I'm not
no.
kidding you. It was just like, really thought I was straight out depressed. I was not depressed, but I was just lifeless,
Oh
laying
my
on the couch,
gosh.
being the biggest couch potato ever. And I thought it might be really fun to do a topic on how to calm your nervous system. I do have some techniques that are really helpful for me, but I wanted to pick your brain as well, so next time
Yeah.
this doesn't happen to me. And I can imagine a lot of highly sensitive people have the same struggle. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I think there's prevention and then there's management and then recovery. Like there's different ways to tackle each phase of the problem.
yesterday was like a deep recovery mode for me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
just to give our listeners insight into my life for the past 4 weeks, it's been either work or renovating nonstop. I
Mm.
didn't have one day off in 4 weeks. So it was just nonstop working, renovating, sleeping, eating, and just
Yeah.
functioning. So it's for a highly sensitive person, that's just a lot to take in.
I've been like very busy doing other things. I feel like I've been doing a lot of processing and problem solving and just a lot of like mental and emotional taxing things. So yeah, it's definitely a good topic to talk about.
So, what is your go-to technique when you're super stressed out?
If I turn on my coaching brain, I could probably spit out a bunch of very scientific stuff, but I also feel like part of what we were talking about we wanted to do with this podcast is what do we personally do? Like what works for us?
Exactly. Yes.
And it's funny because I started thinking about this. I know from a scientific perspective that the best way to calm your nervous system is through breath work. You cannot have a
Yeah.
calm nervous system without deep breathing. You have to be breathing deep to have a calm nervous system, and you can't have a calm nervous system without breathing deeply. So I was actually thinking about reflecting on this. What are the things that I do in my own personal life? And I realized that the things that calm me down seem to be the things that allow me to take a natural deep breath. There are times I feel like I forget to breathe.
Yeah.
Where like I've had friends and family be like, "Are you breathing right now?" And I'm like, I don't know if I am. I think that's just a very clear sign of stress, a stress indicator when you're taking really shallow breaths. When I was brainstorming my ideas for this episode, I realized that all of the things that I put on my list are all things that I've noticed in myself take a natural deep breath. So like when I'm sitting outside with my cat, getting in tune with my senses and the things that are around me and looking at the trees and breathing in the fresh air and watching my cat just prance around and have a good time, I notice myself get more into the present moment and just naturally slow my breathing.
Talking about breathing, in my yoga
Yeah.
class recently, I learned a really nice technique, and I've been applying it in the last few weeks whenever I noticed like I was going on high speed.
Yeah.
And it's the 5-5 technique. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I've tried it even when I was working and I started noticing that I felt stressed or anything.
Yeah.
And you basically just breathe in for 5 and breathe out for 5 and breathe in for 5. It's super easy. And I feel like if you do it 3-4 times after each other, you suddenly feel so reset in your energy. So I really love breathing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of what's out there for recommendations does have to do with breathing. And I think sometimes people can think, well, that's dumb. It's breathing. We're always breathing. That's too simple of a solution. Like sometimes I feel like people want more complicated solutions because they think, well, if it was that easy, why is it so
Yeah.
hard? Like one of the most helpful things that I learned when studying this type of stuff is the realization that your relationship with your nervous system is a two-way street. You can become stressed, and I think sometimes that feels disempowering because we think that our nervous system has gotten into this state, and now we just are in this state and we have to deal with this nervous system state of being stressed. But we actually have the ability to influence our nervous system just as much as it has the ability to let us know that we're stressed. And that's kind of
Yeah.
where the breathing thing comes in. It's a very direct way to tell your nervous system that it can start shifting back into that parasympathetic mode. And it's really cool to think that just as much as your nervous system can let you know that it's stressed, you can also tell it to calm down. You have the ability to
Exactly.
decide and influence your body in that way. And breathing
Yeah.
is that very direct signal to your nervous system, oh, okay, we're in a safe place now. I can relax. Even when we're not in the stressful situation, if we're thinking about it, which most of us HSPs are going to be doing, it's like
Yes. Yes.
processing and processing and going over it again and whatever. So your body still thinks it's in that stressed state. I've noticed as well with the things that I wrote on my list is there are things that make me come back to the present moment. I think we get really caught up in processing what's happening before and worrying about what's happening in the future. And it's like we're not in the present.
Yeah.
And breathing and being in your body allows your mind and your heart space and your all of you to just realize, oh, okay, I'm in this present moment. The thing
Yeah.
that I'm worrying about in the future hasn't happened yet. That thing that happened in the past is already
Exactly.
gone. Like I can just be here with myself. And that's all your nervous system wants is just,
Yeah.
please just be present with me and breathe and
Yeah.
be here, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I think being present is so important when starting to calm down your nervous system. It's actually in my yoga class. I'm such a big
Yeah.
fan of my yoga class, so I'm going to talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
But
No, yoga is
that's one of the,
fantastic.
yes, it's like one of the first things we do in our yoga class is to really come back to the present by being mindful about your body. And
Mm.
then the next thing we do is focus on our breathing. And
Yeah.
then I also really love, which is also really relating to something you've shared earlier with me, is envisioning a rope or an anchor going down
Mm.
into earth, which is like a really
Yeah.
grounding practice as well. And if you combine that with breathing, if you find breathing boring, then it's nice to also visualize the anchor going down into earth because it also really takes you out of your mind and into the body and just draws back the energy that is stored in the top of your body. Just
Yeah,
draw
it's
it
like
back
shifting
down.
the almost like going down to the lower chakras too. You know,
Yes.
it's funny because I think that my best advice anytime is that anyone's ever talked to me about what's your sleep tip for highly sensitive people. And I feel like most of the time that I've talked to HSPs, the reason they struggle to fall asleep is because their mind is going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
And the thing that I realized for me, because I mentioned actually in a previous podcast when I was younger, it took me sometimes 4 hours to fall asleep.
Oh gosh.
Ridiculously long amount of time just laying there thinking and not being able to shut my brain off. And thank God someday at one point when I was younger, I came to the realization that if I focused my conscious attention on my breath, I would fall asleep in 2 minutes. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. My brain just needed something to focus on. And if I just
Yeah.
redirected it to focusing on my breathing, just inhaling and exhaling, the sensation of breathing, the
Yeah.
duration, like whatever I could do to just keep my attention on that. And that was all my body needed to be shifting back into this present, embodied, relaxed state. And it was like within minutes, I would fall asleep. And it was my,
Wow.
my mind was blown. I was like,
It's
how is this
crazy.
this is the most simple solution ever, but it's just go back to the
Yeah.
basics, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Breathing really is underrated.
Right? But that's like the reason we're laughing is because it's so like duh. Like sometimes I think too, as a coach, I've had people when I've said, out in the world that I'm a wellness coach, they're like, all right, give me your 5 top tips, go, whatever. And I'm just like, honestly, sleep,
Breathe.
water, food, movement, breathing, like it's just
Start
I think
there.
sometimes with the internet and so much information and all these different things that people are selling you and whatever it is, I feel like we expect the solution to be complicated. We expect there to be some big revelation of some secret that someone unearthed on some distant planet that they came up with this amazing thing. But
Yes.
it's like, you know what? It's just find the ways to give your human body what it is that it's needing to just function. And sometimes I think we get
Yeah.
so busy and overcomplicate things that we're like, it can't just be that I need to drink more water. That's boring, you know?
Yeah, true. I think I agree. I think we make it so complex because the human mind really is complex, but we
Right.
should just look at the animal kingdom, all the animals, what they
Exactly.
do. And they are not
Yeah.
stressed out. They are just relaxed, just chilling, eating, sleeping, pooping,
Right.
having fun.
Yeah, I mean, and they're actually, this is a whole other conversation, but there's a lot of trauma-related studies observing animals and how they deal with stress and they shake it off. They like go through their stressful thing. They have all this
Yes.
adrenaline built up in their system and they just shake it off. Shake it off.
I've
And then,
tried that a couple of times actually. Like
yeah,
when I
how did it
was in
go?
really high stress, really well, like in high stress
Mm,
situations where I was just, for example, having a difficult conversation with a client, and afterwards I was just so in overload. I was just
yeah.
like just shaking it off, and it
Yeah.
was so powerful, just shaking that stress out of your body.
Yeah, and actually, I'll touch on this too, because I used to struggle with really intense panic attacks. And the one thing that I started to realize, my first inclination when I would get an anxiety attack was I needed to move. I needed to get up and
Yeah.
pace around. I needed to go outside, get some fresh air, but I could not sit still. And it makes sense. Like now understanding it from a scientific perspective and knowing much more about the
Yes.
nervous system, you have all these stress hormones flooding your body and it's telling you to run, right? To escape, to
Yeah.
do something. So your body literally prepares for physical action. So you have
Yeah.
all these hormones flooding your body that you're meant to be used up by physically moving. So it made perfect
Yeah.
sense to me that the way that I was like instinctually calming myself was to get up and move and use up those hormones that were pumping through my blood, you know?
It's just reminding me whenever I feel angry, I
Yeah.
immediately start cleaning the house. I
Yeah.
just feel the need to get out the anger, like rubbing the anger into the toilet,
Yeah. What a productive way to express your
Yes.
anger.
Yes, very powerful, very powerful. I think it's also just a stress reaction, to the anger you're feeling, and then just
Right.
go and yeah,
Right,
do
but that's
something good
like
with it.
that's you're biologically programmed. When you're angry, you want to take action. The purpose of anger, I love Gabor Mate, an expert on trauma and all of these things, is brilliantly. I love how he describes that anger is so purposeful. Like anger has a purpose. There's some boundary that you feel like has been crossed. That's what anger is. And it's purposeful. It's meant to let you know that something has not felt right and it's causing you to want to take action. That's what anger is.
Yeah.
Your instinct is to push something away or whatever. So it is. It's like
Yes.
when you feel angry and you do something active, it genuinely helps because it's what your system is craving. It's like, I need to go do
Yeah.
something. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So when you notice yourself being really stressed out and your nervous system being in overload, the best thing you can do is maybe go do a workout, go for a walk.
With HSP, we're so in our brains and disconnected from our bodies. Sometimes I feel like the answer is just check in with what it is you feel like you need in that moment. Because if you're really sad, maybe you want to sleep. I don't know. Maybe if you're
Yeah.
really angry or stressed, maybe you do want to go on a run. I actually just talked about this with a coaching client. There's a difference between mental exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, and physical exhaustion. So like if you're very physically stressed, like if you've had a very long, stressful day, sometimes going on a run isn't what your body is asking for.
No,
If you're feeling really emotional, maybe going on a run is what you need because you need to like, I don't know, get that out of your system.
really
Just
depends.
yeah, like getting in that practice of checking in when I had my panic attacks. Like my body is asking me to move now. That's what it needed.
Yeah.
And even just that very simple practice of, okay, coming back to this moment in time, what am I feeling? What is it that my body is asking me for right now? And just
Yeah.
following through on that. And then also builds trust with yourself that you
Yeah.
can have this relationship where you're supportive and you're listening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also for those listening in who are like, okay, I don't feel like running. I don't feel like those high intensity tasks. There
Yeah.
are a few like
Yoga.
really relaxed tasks. Yeah, besides yoga. For instance, I really love my Shakti mat. I don't know if you also have one, but it's like a mat with a lot of like spikes on it. And I can imagine when you're
Oh,
listening in that
yeah.
you're like, oh my God, that sounds terrible for the highly sensitive person. I thought so too, but when I gave it a try, it was so powerful. And
Mm,
that's actually my go-to tool when my whole system is crashed and I just am in freeze mode and I can't do anything. Then I
mm.
just grab my Shakti mat, take off my top, lay down on the Shakti mat with my back And after a few minutes, you just notice your whole body, your whole nervous system really start relaxing.
Something else I was going to talk about, especially for HSPs, is tap into the sensory things, because sometimes that can be really grounding and really soothing. But I also wonder if part of the reason why that mat is so effective is because sometimes what the nervous system needs to calm down is to feel held, to feel like pressure. Like sometimes now a lot of trauma therapists will say to do this, to have the physical contact and that pressure. That's why weighted blankets work, because it's like that physical tactile. You feel like you're being like held, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, I actually combine when I lay down on my Shakti mat, it's really painful. The initial sensation is painful. So I have to warn you about that.
Yeah.
But after a few minutes, you notice a real relaxation in your entire body. You start feeling warmth in your body. And it's just all the tension that you've been holding is kind of getting released. And talking about weighted blankets, if it's really bad, if it's like an SOS situation in my life, then I also have a weighted eye mask, which I can put on top of my eyes. And that's also such a nice sensation when you're feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated, to just have along with the Shakti mat. Yeah. It's nice to have some relaxing techniques as well, and not only the high intensity tasks.
Oh, absolutely. I think it definitely depends on what your system is needing in that moment, you know. But I do want to talk more about the sensory things, because I think, you know, again, this is one of those two sides of the same coin thing with HSPs, where I feel like a lot of the stress that we experience comes from being so sensory sensitive, like sensitive to sensory experiences. But also we can really lean into that as a way to support ourselves as well. So like a lot of the things that I had written down too. So I'll just say on my little bullet points was time in nature, cuddling with a partner, with pets, which is the same, that's sort of tactile thing, right? And then the other things that I do that I've actually realized I've been doing recently, like I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, processing a lot of very intense emotional stuff and just like whatever. And something that I love to do, and this is very personal, but I'm willing to share it because I think it'll help other people too, is that I save old voicemails. It's just something I've always done. So anytime a friend of mine or a partner or a family member leaves me a voicemail, and it's not just, hey, I'm at the grocery store. If it's something like, I'm wishing you happy birthday, or I miss you, or I hope you're doing well, like that kind of thing, I save them. So that I have them whenever I want. I've got almost every single person in my life that I've loved on my phone that I can listen to their voice.
Oh, that's so nice.
When I'm really in panic, anxiety attack level of stress, that within seconds, my whole system just relaxes, and it's just the most beautiful thing. And so for me, I feel too, part of the reason that I'm sure that's so helpful to me is because it's so sensory. I feel so encompassed by like the sound of that person's voice that it really makes my whole system relax. And I also have noticed too that something that relaxes me is listening to acoustic guitar music.
Oh, yes. I love that as well.
It's just feel like there's certain things. So I would encourage people, if you're listening, to think about like, what are those maybe very specific things that you can do or listen to or look at, watching a sunset or smelling your favorite baked good cookies in the oven, or you know, getting a back scratch, stuff like that, that you notice your body without even having the option calm down. Those types of things calm me down without even me consciously thinking about the fact that it should be calming me down, you know?
Exactly. It should also be fun, you know? It shouldn't feel like another to-do on your list, but it should just really fit with how you are as a person and what you enjoy. And you can really make it personal in that way, right?
Yeah, I think it's customizing a little toolkit for yourself. I literally have an anxiety, what did I call it? Stress and anxiety toolkit that you customize inside my course.
I love that.
And it is, it's like all of those little things. Think about what is your go-to thing? Like the voicemails for me have been a lifesaver. The times that I've used the voicemails are when I have no tools, no physical access to anything that would normally help me. If I can't get up and move around, if I can't call someone, if I don't have any, sometimes some of my anxiety things were, there was a certain gum I could chew that would calm me down. Like if I didn't have access to any of those things, but I had my phone, I have access to all of these people that have loved me and that I've loved in my life that can immediately calm me down. So
yeah, very powerful. And also, if you can lay down, that's also a very good exercise. Just lay down on your back.
Down.
No, seriously, lay down with your back on the floor with your feet up against the wall. I've learned that from one of the experts I've been working with this year.
Yeah.
And she mentioned that it's one of the most powerful techniques to calm down your nervous system. And I've tried it as well, you know, when I felt really overstimulated. Just lay down, feet up against the wall, and just lay there. And you can combine it with breath work. You can combine it with listening to voice notes. It's such an easy way to really relax and tell your nervous system everything is okay.
Yeah. Maybe I should just speak for myself and not other people, but I feel like there have been so many times I've come across tips and I'm like, that's too simple. There's no way that
Yes.
works.
I agree.
But it's like something like that where
Yeah.
you're like, just try it. Just put your feet up against the wall. It looks silly or whatever you think
It's
it's not going to work, but it
Yes,
does.
but
It's just,
it does. It's so
yeah.
simple. And also in the shower, I think that's the
Oh,
final
yeah.
tip that I wrote down that I do. Oftentimes my stress is related to other people. I think that's also because I'm an empath and it's just me overthinking things and maybe taking on things that are not mine. And when I'm in the shower, I sometimes just envision washing off all the negative energies, all the stress, anything that I might be holding on to. I just wash it off. And stepping out of the shower, I immediately feel like a sense of relief doing that. And it's just a mindset shift that you do while in the shower. And it's so easy because you do shower anyways,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, water is energetically cleansing. I know a lot of sensitive people that use showers as a way to cleanse what they feel like they've absorbed throughout the day, whether it's other people's emotions or stress or whatever. Yeah, I think it does really work.
Yeah, I think my yoga teacher also mentioned at the end of the day, you can wash, of course, you still wash your hands, but you can mindfully wash your hands, just imagining washing off all the energies that you've attached to yourself throughout the day. And I haven't tried that myself, but I found it a really helpful tip to share. Anyways, I think that our listeners have a lot of inspiration from our go-to techniques to calm on your nervous system. But of course, we do not know everything. So if you, as a listener, have a tip for other listeners or for us, please share. And we'd be happy to share each other's stories and learn from each other.
If you tried any of the things that we recommended or we mentioned, let us know in the comments how it went, because I think that's also fun to hear too.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in. Would you like us to talk about a specific topic in our podcast? Make sure to comment and we'll keep it in mind for the future.
And if you enjoy what we're doing here, we'd love for you to like and share this episode so that our podcast reaches other HSPs who can enjoy it as well.
While you're already here, don't forget to check out our additional resources for HSPs and empaths.
And Catherine has her own blog site and has created an online membership for HSPs and empaths with featured experts on relevant personal growth topics every month.
And Tiara has her own YouTube channel and has also built a step-by-step online program for HSPs on the journey to thriving in their health, relationships, and career.
All of our links are in the description. See you on the next episode.